We were just speaking to you about the situation where you know the similarities between you and Ed,
Uh-huh.
and how you had helped him get into office by volunteering. So what happened after that?
Well, Ed got elected,
Hmm.
and it was a pretty sizable majority, along with the rest of the country voting Democratic.
Hmm.
And and I sat back hoping that I would get a position working with him because I was a part of helping him get elected. I was a part of making plans and I had a lot to offer to the city.
Hmm.
It didn't happen.
Hmm.
And you may say, okay, so that's sour grapes, but
Hmm.
you know, I was on disability,
Hmm.
uh, and I you know,
You did you
I
put a
just
lot of
I
work
just
in.
well, yeah, but so life goes on.
Hmm.
Um, I was not the only person that Ed did not include in his cabinet or in a position that helped him get elected, that had ideas to improve the city,
Hmm.
that he used, and all of us, commiserated for a short time and went on with our lives.
Right. Mm.
Um, about 6 months later, the director of public works uh, called me and asked me if I knew how to do CAD drawing, AutoCAD, and I said I didn't, but I could learn pretty quick. I'm good with computers. I had taught AutoCAD actually at the vocational technical school.
Oh, okay.
Not that I
Hmm.
knew anything about it, but you just have to know more than kids in
Then the kids
10th
know.
grade, I taught a lot of computer courses, and I
Hmm.
taught auto body, and I taught mechanics, and I
Oh
taught
gosh.
carpentry, and
Well, what didn't
I
you
taught
teach? Yeah.
warehousing. I didn't teach food,
Okay.
and I didn't teach gardening, the landscaping,
Hmm.
um, and I think and nursing. I didn't teach nursing or beautician,
Hmm.
healthcare, that
Hmm.
kind of stuff. But pretty much everything else I taught.
Okay.
So anyway, I said I'm sure that I could learn it quickly.
Hmm.
I just hadn't, any experience at it. And so I came in and I interviewed with the chief engineer of the city, and told him, I said, look, if I don't learn it, then let me go.
Hmm. Hmm.
There's a probationary period when you get hired for the city. It was a union position.
Hmm.
It was a pretty low pay union position,
Hmm.
which is why it had been empty for 2 years.
Oh, okay.
And the work for the position was backing up. The work was basically taking uh, the drawings that come in from developers and and adding them to the city system
Hmm.
so that the city map is up to date. Uh, and so I came in and I started teaching myself CAD. I actually had a big book from my daughter who'd taken a semester of CAD in college, and I was using that and using the program itself. And within a few weeks, I was doing the work of the job.
Wow. Okay. So you were self-educated with that.
I was self-educated with
Hmm.
that,
Hmm.
uh, and and things were going along swimmingly when the person that I reported to got sick,
Hmm.
and I was new enough there that nobody really knew me. Nobody was giving me any work to do, and I finished the work that he had assigned me.
Hmm.
So I didn't have anything to do. So I went to the head of the GIS, which is Geospatial Information Services,
Okay.
and I said, "Can I learn GIS?" GIS is mapping, but
Okay.
it's like three dimensional, like Google Maps, but even more intense.
Mm.
And through GIS, you see an aerial photograph of the city along with layers of whatever information you want, and you can look at information geospatially.
Mm.
Um, and I asked him if I could learn that, and he handed me a thick stack of books and said, "Go to it." So I went to it, and as a result of learning GIS on my own, I was making up work for myself that I would imagine, if I had to do this, how would I do it with GIS?
Right.
And and through looking at the map, I like to say looking at the map without having a reason.
Hmm.
If you've got a job to do, you pretty much do your job, and you don't do not your job.
Right.
But I didn't have a job, so I
Hmm.
was looking at the map with fresh eyes, and I was starting to find things and discover things about the city that were valuable for the city to know. And this all sort of came together when I was approached to do some work on. The city wanted to add billboards. They wanted to look into adding billboards to the city as a revenue stream.
Hmm.
And they handed me a list of 12 possible addresses that the city had that might work for them, and asked me to do some of the deed research. on it, because that's another part of the job that I learned, was how to do deed research.
Well, to see what the city owned, or
Well, what they own, but
yeah.
whether there were restrictive clauses. A
Oh.
lot of the land that the city owns is restricted in its use. Some of it because of the way it was funded, some of it because of the way it was donated, some of it because it was swapped. There's a lot of reasons why there are lands that are prohibited from building on or from using for other than recreation or things like that. So any land the city owns, it's always possible you can't put a billboard up on it.
Okay.
But instead of just doing my job and saying, is this land able to have a billboard on it?
Here we go again.
I did it my way.
Yeah.
I said, well, where did this list come from? It came from people who sat down, like the mayor and the assistant, the managing director, and other people who didn't know Allentown, and probably had no idea what Allentown owns. And so I made a map in GIS that showed all the land that Allentown owns. And I sent a copy to the mayor, and I sent a copy to the managing director, and out of that I highlighted each property, made an 8.5 by 11 page that showed a picture of the property with a description of what was happening on it. First of all, the only people who really knew what Allentown owned was the guy that mows the lawn. He's at the bottom, and nobody's talking to him.
Right.
Okay, so the mayor's not talking to the lawnmower guy, and the lawnmower guy's not talking to the mayor. So the mayor, they weren't playing with a full deck of knowing what were the possible places we could put billboards. There were some awesome places to put billboards. We didn't know we owned them.
So basically, instead of you finding the 12 that they wanted you to do, you found.
I came up with about 47 possibilities.
Wow! So you almost triple the amount.
Well, and they weren't all workable, but they were, at least at first glance, part of the possibility list.